what criteria, though, other than, say, tattoos or maybe being in the wrong place at the wrong time, are they using to determine that someone is actually a member of one of these organizations?
Intelligence and the men and women on the ground in the interior of our country who are finally being allowed to do their jobs. They should be trusted and respected by the American public with this operation. It was approximately $6 million to El Salvador for the detention of these foreign terrorists. That is pennies on the dollar in comparison to the cost of life and the cost it would impose on the American taxpayer to house these terrorists in maximum security prisons here in the United States of America.
White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt defending the Trump administration's deportation flights to send criminal illegal migrants, some of whom are from Trinidad, to El Salvador. The judge who ordered the return of those flights back to America, giving Trump a deadline of noon today to answer questions and explain his use of the Alien Enemies Act of 1798. A senior Trump official telling Fox News of the more than 260 illegals deported Saturday, 137 were removed via that act, and more than 20 were Salvadorian MS-13 gang members. Texas Congressman Brandon Gill now looking to impeach Judge James Boasberg over this move. Elon Musk backed the effort, calling it, quote, necessary. Joining me now is North Dakota Senator Kevin Cramer. Senator, thanks very much for being here this morning. Your reaction to all of this?
Well, here in North Dakota, we're pretty familiar with James Boasberg. He is the judge that has tried to keep our oil from flowing for the last several years on the Dakota Access Pipeline. So we know this activist liberal judge quite well. I would say one of the problems you see in his order and his behavior really is this sort of obvious outrage about something that was happening before he issued the order to stop it, instead of dealing with the policy itself. I can understand an honest disagreement on an interpretation of law, but this idea that somehow you're going to return all of the foreign terrorists back to the United States willingly because he's all upset about being offended by the Trump administration, I think it's just blatantly biased. But we also, I think, should remember he's just a district judge. He's not part of a circuit. He's not an appellate judge. He's not on the Supreme Court of the United States. He's one judge, granted, in Washington, D.C., which gives him some jurisdiction. But the idea that he can just, force the administration to turn rapists and murderers loose because somehow they come from another place and he said so is ridiculous. Yeah, I mean, it's not only did he stop the flow of oil in your state, this is the same judge who sat on the FISA court and told the FISA court that Kevin Kleinsmith at the FBI didn't do much wrong, even though he manufactured information about Carter Page. It was a lie. It wasn't true. He got a slap on the wrist about it because of this judge. So we know that this is an activist judge who's against Donald Trump. No question about it. He was an Obama appointee. He fits right into the mold. But I always get upset and get concerned about any judge who's, by virtue of his title, judge, supposed to be objective, supposed to look at things through the eyes of the Constitution and of the law, not through his personal feelings. And his personal feelings come through over and over again in his behavior recently. And it'd be interesting to see how the hearing goes this afternoon. But I don't think the Trump administration is going to have much trouble explaining to this judge that the President of the United States has unique powers specifically to protect the security and safety of the United States of America and its citizens. And that's exactly what he's doing with these deportations of people who should never been allowed into the country in the first place, much less facilitated by our federal policies coming out of the White House in the previous administration. And do you think the Trump administration will be able to prove that these people are bad people, that they have committed crimes, that they are members of these dangerous gangs? I do believe they will, Maria, but even if they do not, remember, he's just a district court. There is another level, a couple of more levels to go in terms of appealing, and I just think this guy's behavior is going to be slapped down by the D.C. Circuit, even as liberal as that is. They've had to overturn him a number of times, and so I suspect that the Trump administration will be successful. The problem is it's such a nuisance to have to do this at a time when the American people are largely behind what the president is carrying out. Right, and that's the point. They want to slow down President Trump. That's right. That's the motivation for Democrats in every branch of government, as you're seeing play out in the Congress of the United States. I mean, look at last week's continuing resolution. All the Democrats vote against a continuing resolution. What's the most natural thing in the world to them? They always support continuing resolutions. They prefer continuing resolutions and omnibus spending bills. But now, because Donald Trump negotiated it and wanted it, they somehow are all against it. It's a true syndrome. It really is.
That is unbelievable. Meanwhile, the focus at hand now gets back to the reconciliation package. Lawmakers, of course, have the week off. You're on recess, but then you'll focus on budget reconciliation next week after averting that government shutdown on Friday. President Trump talked about tax and spending issues with Republicans on the Senate Finance Committee last week. And I want to get your take on where we are. Montana Senator Steve Daines says that the House bill is not quite yet beautiful. Oklahoma Congressman and House Ways and Means Committee member Kevin Hearn warning that the Senate should not make any major changes to the House's budget. Here he is with me on this program yesterday. Watch.
We have the slimmest margins in the House in history. We already pretty much know we have a one-vote loss. And so if we lose another, this will all fail. President Trump say he wants one big, beautiful bill. And the reason for that is it gives everybody in the House and the Senate something. It gives you border. It gives you funding of the military. It gives you new tax decreases on those who need them most, like no tax on tips and no tax on overtime. So all of these things are really important. When you are dependent upon votes, this is so important to do one bill.
Senator, where are you on this?
So I want whatever bill can pass both chambers, whether it's 3 different bills, 2 different bills, one big, beautiful bill. I'm good with all of it. The problem is I do think that Representative Hearn's strategy is not universal. The idea that somehow because they have a narrower majority in the House, the Senate has to do what the House wants to do. What their bill fails to do is really big. Their bill fails to make the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act permanent law. That difference is not trifling at all, because if their bill was to pass, but we weren't able to make those tax cuts permanent, we'd be in the same position a few years from now with an expiring of the tax cuts. So I don't quite understand this pride of ownership, if you will, that the House has. We'll work out the differences, but it may end up being 3 or 2 different bills rather than one big bill. And I think Donald Trump, from everything I can tell from his discussions, he wants whatever can pass as well. So I think both sides have to be respectful of the challenges that the other side has. But I also think a great big bill runs the greatest risk of failing. I think you're better off taking some victories. For example, our bill that funds the border construction and immigration reform and national security, while at the same time generating more revenue with unleashing America's energy potential. That's a nice piece that we can get our hands wrapped around and get it passed, realizing we have 2 more opportunities yet this session of Congress to pass more bills. And I think taking the victories and creating some momentum has a lot of value. But again, I'm for whatever can pass both chambers and be signed by the president.
Well, it has value, but you've got to get it in front of the president to sign by the middle of the year, right? Yeah. So timing.
Great point. So the timing is really important, particularly on the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. Yeah. Using the current policy as the baseline, which the House does not do, making sure that those Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, at the very minimum, become permanent law, will expire if we don't get that done by September 30th or by the end of this year. So you're right. That should be the first priority. That, along with funding border and immigration policy and national defense.
Well, September 30th. I mean, Mike Johnson says he wants a bill on the president's desk in May.
Yeah, I think we should. I think we should do exactly that. And that's why taking the House bill with the tax cuts that doesn't use current policy, that would not do anything to make the tax law permanent, I think is fine. But we should take that, tweak it to use Representative Hearn's words, and tweak it so that it becomes permanent law, pass that one, and that way we can breathe a sigh of relief knowing that the economy, in your previous segment, we can get back to real GDP growth, real productivity growth.
Senator, thank you so much. Good to see you this morning, sir.
Good to see you.
Cramer.
Thanks, Maria.
All right, we'll see you soon. We'll be right back.